because they have to fool us one more time. They have to take our eyes off the real issues and the real villains of the piece. And so they construct false villains, windmills at which they wish the people to tilt, like Kofi Annan, who has enraged them forever by describing their war as an illegal war, meaning that they are criminals. Those responsible for an illegal war are, what they said at Nuremberg in 1945, guilty of the, and I quote, paramount war crime, which is a crime of aggression, the illegal invasion of another people's country. These people want to turn your ire against President Chirac in France, against people like me in the anti-war movement in Britain, against people like Scott Ritter, the former American arms inspector. They want to have you running around on inquiry after inquiry based on their forged documents, instead of putting them on trial, at least politically, and sweeping them out of office.
We're talking to the Member of Parliament, George Galloway. And, George, are there any particular websites or places you'd like to point our listeners so they can kind of get an idea of what really happened here? Because I want to go into how they tried to forge documents on you and then how you turned the tables on them, and also any new developments, because there's so many forgeries that they tried to use against you that they kind of got caught up in each other's feet and stumbled.
Yes, they did, and people can read about it at the respectcoalition.org. That's www.respectcoalition, all one word, .org. And there they will see the story as it unfolded now over nearly 3 years.
But they put out so many lies, their lies contradicted each other.
Yes, the forged documents couldn't keep up with the other forgeries, and therefore were throwing up mutually incompatible stories. If I take one that's of particular interest to American listeners, it is the one perpetrated by the Christian Science Monitor, generally regarded as one of the world's great newspaper titles, but who purchased a set of documents from someone claiming to be an Iraqi general within a few days of the fall of Baghdad. They placed that on their front page around the world and on their website around the world, that I had received $10 million from a son of Saddam Hussein whom I had never met.
But it turns out the Oil for Food program didn't even exist then.
Exactly. A son of Saddam Hussein I had never even met, and starting in a year I had never yet set foot in Iraq, and finishing on a given date, an actual date, when instead of being in Iraq, as they claimed, collecting another $1 million check, which is another ludicrous aspect to it. Iraq, of course, under quarantine, was not part of the international banking system, so a check from the Iraqi regime would have been as useful as toilet paper. The date that they chose, I was in fact demonstrably in the House of Commons on the Guardian website doing an interactive interview with the Guardian's readers. Now, I said on the day they called me about this in the English press, because the Christian Science Monitor made no effort to contact me or put that allegation to me.
And by the way, your background is journalism. You know about real journalism.
I do know about journalism, and I am a columnist and a journalist of many years standing. But when the English press, following this story up, contacted me, and I told them the truth, I was denounced by the neocon journals in the United States. I was clearly guilty. According to them, I had become a multimillionaire thanks to Saddam Hussein. The only problem is that, and then an English newspaper bought a set of documents off the same ersatz general, and they subjected their documents to forensic examination, only to discover that the signatures on them were forged, that the information within the documents was mutually contradictory, and when I gave them my passports to check the dates I had come and gone from Iraq, they didn't match up with the times I was supposed to be in Iraq picking up money.
Now,
so
as
the Christian Science Monitor then forensically examined their own documents. You might think they should have done that before they published the smear against me, but they subjected their own documents to chemical ink forensic analysis, and the whole thing came down like a pack of cards. It was a crude set of forgeries, but an intricate one, and one which had been done within days of the fall of Baghdad.
Now, sir, you had never, as you've said, taken one thin dime. And you're on record. I went and checked it in LexisNexis. You had actually protested our government's giving Saddam the anthrax, the botulism, the chemical weapons decades ago.
Yes, and I'll tell you what, not one of the new Labour government that's currently in power and in league with George Bush was with me on the protest. Not one of them. No Tony Blairs, no Jack Straws, nobody from the current new Labour hierarchy ever set foot on any of our demonstrations. As a matter of fact, when we were demonstrating outside Downing Street against the presence there of the Iraqi government leaders, Douglas Hurd, who was then the Foreign Office Minister, told the Iraqi leaders that we who were protesting for democracy and human rights in Iraq were just a bunch of communist troublemakers. And that's what we were doing. We were accused of causing trouble for those who were making big money out of the special relationship which British and American companies had with the Iraqi regime.
Now, there's so many forgeries and so many lies, and those are now admitted to be lies by the papers that did it themselves. But the neocons, sir, I listened to them, they're still slandering you and still crucifying you on a daily basis.
Yes, they are, but I fear that fewer and fewer people are listening. My impression of my very brief visit to the United States, which I hope to follow up with a speaking tour over the summer months, is that there are a vast number of American citizens who've already seen through this crew, this neocon.
A lot of their supporters.
Fundamentalist.
A lot of their former supporters.
Yes. By the way, one of the amazing things about your neocons is that so many of them used to be Trotskyists and Marxists of one variety or another. They've exchanged one zealotry for another zealotry, even though it's facing in entirely the opposite direction to the one they used to face. But my impression is that fewer and fewer people are listening to these neocon journals and websites, because I've had this fantastic response from the people of the United States. And I'm looking forward to meeting many of them at the speaking engagements I do in the United States over the summer.
You told me that you've gotten 20,000 emails from Americans.
Yes.
That is
20,000 emails. And it's not easy for an American to get hold of the email address of a British member of Parliament, which is, by the way, gallowayg@parliament.uk. gallowayg@parliament.uk.
Well, let me just say
this. The more we
this.
get, the better. We should all stay in touch. We should make a big network on both sides of the Atlantic, because your country and my country are the biggest problems in the world today. We're the biggest rogue states in the world today, and the citizens have got to take back control of the plane.